Okay, I think most people have rejoined us, and good afternoon to everybody who have now reconvened here within this concluding session of our 2 days virtual pre-presidency conference after a highly interesting panel discussion this morning, and now the different roundtable discussions, parallel discussions that we just heard. Before I give the floor to the concluding speakers, let me just share some thoughts from my side with you very briefly. It's just because I think, at least I personally learned a lot during these 2 days. I definitely have to say that I improved my technical skills for conducting virtual meetings and how to deal with some of the technical hiccups and then stay calm while doing so, because those things just happen these days. I think we have to get used to that, and I think we really had a good virtual conference. We also discussed the effects of COVID-19 for the incoming presidency, and I think we all agreed that it has already been challenging for preparing the program, and it will be challenging the presidency as such, but we also learned about the chances and opportunities that come with this pandemic. And we should take great care not to miss out on those opportunities. And with here, I mean, for example, focusing on the green recovery, to recollect the EU's core values such as rule of law, to re-engage with citizens more closely, and to strengthen the EU's role in a post-COVID-19 world. We also learned that the German presidency will have to deal with the Brexit. That's no news. But we also we also learned that a Brexit is not likely to be a game changer for the EU's differentiated future. Although we have to make sure that membership still matters in the future. And we might want to keep an eye on changing alliances among the remaining member states. We then discussed issues of migration and asylum, enlargement and neighborhood, climate policy, institutional reforms, and social policy. And not to forget, we learned a lot about and from youth ideas who were very well developed and clear-cut. And I want to also thank Axel Dittmann, in particularly for having responded actually to those ideas directly. If you should have missed any of the sessions or not yet read the TEPSA recommendations or the youth ideas, do not worry, the conference website will continue to be accessible and will display videos of all sessions and our publications. Before I turn the floor to our concluding speakers, please allow me to thank on behalf of IAP once again all of the participants from TEPSA, from IAP's Scientific Advisory Board, and very particularly the young participants, those who participated passively and actively. I then also want to thank TEPSA for this great joint endeavor and the entire team at the TEPSA offices in Brussels, the team of Greenstorming for the technical support in setting up and implementing this virtual edition of our PPC, the team at IAP, Simone Klee, Vanessa Hirsch, Dimitar Kiranov, Henrik van Homeyer, Jana Schubert, and last but definitely not least, Victoria Meissner, as well as all backup moderators to the sessions. Last but not least, I thank the Federal Foreign Office, the European Commission, and the Stiftung Mercator for the financial support. And now I turn the floor to Lucia, who is our chairperson of the board of TEPSA, and I give the floor to you for your concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Funda. Thank you very much for the organizers to call me for giving this speech on concluding remarks after these 2 days, a really nice time of the conference. After the all the things and the panels and sessions I've heard. Unfortunately, as you can see, not all the sessions had been able to participate because of its parallel session, but the agenda had been quite, developed and discussed. So let me shortly conclude what had been spoken and what had been, somehow guided for the future. I'm not going to give the recommendations to German pre-presidency, but let me share the idea that I wonder that there is no better candidate for running the European Union through these unprecedented times of a COVID crisis than the Germany as one of the founding members of the European communities and one of the strong leader in the last development and the last decade especially. So as far as everyone knows, you very coherently call the conference Shaping the Future of Europe, because however we had been discussed many ideas about how the EU should looks like, what are the new challenges, what with the enlargement, what with the internal affairs, some kind of sustainability. The MFF is already on the table. There came the pandemic, and we have to turn a little bit the discussion about how to implement the EU ideas under the next German presidency, but to stand for the values and the policies we had been adopted and agreed together. So in these times, in these unprecedented times, we should really not forget on the agenda which make the European Union member states to cooperate closely together, not only the common policies or within the common institutions, but also in the other areas where the dialogue is rather implemented in a way to work with and sustain in the different discussions which we are right now addressed. I strongly appreciated that the conference had introduced the Young Ideas panel, because the young people are those who are not only the new generation, but they had to step in a way to come with the innovations, to give us some kind of a reflection in a way what we are doing, what we are discussing, and how we are implementing the concrete policies. So we should not forget about this young voice, which is sometimes very much optimistic and enthusiastic, but we should learn from them because they have a very objective and clear view about their future, about the future of the European Union, where they want to live and how they would like to participate on the decision-making process and on the implementation of the policies. Meanwhile, we should be aware that it's not only the internal affairs of the European Union, how we will develop and what we will address in the incoming months, but also it's the question of a position of the member states to the European Union, the issue of the differentiated integration, the incoming deal, hopefully with the UK about the Brexit, about the future relations on the common market, on the free movement, and all the benefits which had been developed in relation to UK should not be somehow taken away because of these technicalities and challenges in the pandemic. And I strongly believe that the sense of the cooperation and the common past will lead to the deal, which will be beneficial for the people of the European Union and the United Kingdom as well. And meanwhile, I believe that the Brexit will not be followed by the other examples of withdrawals or with the other opt-outs, which may really lead to a more and deeper differentiated integration. I strongly appreciated the discussion about the migration and asylum, which is, of course, the very sensitive topic, and it was since 2015 especially. But what has been discussed, and I really want to underline it, is the need of the revision of the migration and asylum policy. Also, in the times of closing borders, we could see that these people are not only very vulnerable, but that the states have the responsibility, the member states have the responsibility for granting the minimum humanitarian standards, to guarantee the human rights, to provide and secure their dignity, and meanwhile consider other issues as a joining of the families, the reunification of the families, the right for education, the right for the minimum health care, and so on. So the migration and asylum policy should be only revised and renovated, but also consider very specific issues which had been addressed in the last weeks. And as we know that not only the migration is connected with our partners and the neighboring countries, but also the other issues as a sustainability, the cooperation, the need to closely communicate. I would like to raise the attention that the dialogue on the enlargement and neighborhood policy should be strengthened. Otherwise, the associated factors like the different campaigns, hate speech, hoax, and populism can arise on the borders of the European Union, which in the moment can see like something very small or exceptionally aroused, but meanwhile in a mid-term or long-term strategy, it can really influence the relations of the European Union with the partners on the Balkan or Eastern Partnership. And this is the issue which has to be considered from the beginning, that they need our cooperation, communication, not from the point of the sustainability or security in the region, but also from the point of the next potential and economic cooperation and the social dialogue with these countries. In relation to the last months especially, I would like to draw the attention to the European Green Deal and the lesson learned from the pandemic, which within which we saw that the limitations and the restrictions to the free movement, to the transport, or to regular using of the different plants and elimination of the energy resources had a good or positive impact on our environment. Probably also in your environment, close environment, people use rather the bicycles than the cars. We had been able to manage some of the movements in a different way. We use with more consideration the resources and so on. So it means that we should take in mind that this lesson learned can contribute to the dialogue and to the sustainability of the of this question of having the European Green Deal and the individual contribution to the sustainability of the green dialogue and the good impact we have had. The last but not least, I would like to say a few words in a relations that the lesson learned from the pandemic should be also addressed in a way of social cohesion and the solidarity. We saw in these times that it's not only one of the value of the which is common to the member states, but it should be one of the leading principle in the dialogue between the member states. Because without the taking into mind of the solidarity and the cohesion, every state will have probably worse impact, economic and social impact, rather than if we are able to cooperate or communicate and find a common and more effective solution itself. So just to conclude with a few or two or three ideas which I especially had not only from the discussions from the panels, but one especially from the last which focused on the institutional reform. And there had been discussed the question whether the EU is offering sufficient solution. I would say that the EU is offering the only one solution, which has the real potential to be sustainable implemented. We can see it on the draft of the recovery package. We can see it in a discussion on MFF, and we can see the EU as the one option we have in this moment, and I would say the only one which can be effectively implemented rather than the individual states' contributions and their individual way of trying to settle with the economic and social impacts of the pandemic itself. We should not only ask then whether EU can do something for us, but we should especially look what we can do for a strong European Union. And what we can do for a strong European Union as the effective solution, not only to this crisis, but for the next months and the future of the Europe, is that we can stand for values which are common to all member states and which are clearly and precisely stated in the treaties: democracy, human rights, rule of law, solidarity, and equality. We should observe and implement them properly, and we should reassure that they are reflecting in the discussion on the future of Europe, to which we are directed right now. And I have to say that I strongly believe that all people involved in this discussion, and especially decision makers, should consider the evidence-based approach rather than focus on the rise of political preferences only, as we saw on some examples and in some member states. This discussion and the conference on the future of Europe should also take the inspiration from this conference, from the pre-presidency conference organized in last 2 days, because it was full of inspirational ideas. And I would say that this lesson learned from the individual panel can help to understand the need to look more on the facts, on the communication and the cooperation itself. Let me finally, on this occasion, thank to all these food for thoughts we had received in last 2 days. Plenty of the ideas we can work on together. And it would not happen without the great organization. So let me also thank to Institute for Europäische Politik as the main organizer, the TEPSA, and all the staff and people, everyone which had contributed to the puzzle of the organization, without which we could not have these important and inspirational conclusions for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucia, for these very nice concluding remarks. And I'm gonna pass on right away to Jim Close, who is the Deputy Director General of the General Secretariat of the Council of the European Union. And I'm very happy to hand over the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Funda, and thank you, Lucia, for this sweeping overview of a very successful conference. I have 8 short points, which I'll make quickly. The first one is that I'd like to commend TEPSA for this work, for their overall role as a provider of expertise, analysis, and advice. I think the conference has really touched all the major issues facing the EU right now, and there are many, 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 as we know. And I thought it was a particularly good idea to associate youth to this exercise, because you want to look to the future. My second point is that the COVID-19 crisis, but also the debates about the policies in the European Union, raise horizontal questions. I give 2 examples. One is on methodology. Crises like this one show that the European Union, with its structures and its focus on regulation normally, must develop more executive capacity, more coherence between levels. And on the principles, I think in every single of the big debates, be it coffee, be it migration, be it climate change, there is a debate about solidarity versus responsibility. And you need both. And I think this is very important. My third point is about the overall context, and this was mentioned by many during the discussions over the last 2 days. The overall context is extremely challenging. COVID-19 is a crisis of unprecedented magnitude with wide-ranging effects. This is compounded by Brexit, which is a lose-lose configuration. We are talking about damage limitation. Now, I think the Union will manage. Probably better than the UK, but it is a lose-lose situation. And this happens against the background of worrisome international developments. We now live in a world where our closest ally, historically speaking, the United States, is no longer the same kind of partner as it used to be, and sometimes actively undermines the multilateral order. We have China, which is rising fast and challenging a lot of our values. Russia, unfriendly and playing power politics in the Ukraine. Turkey, difficult partner, with sometimes an aggressive attitude in the Eastern Mediterranean. And then, of course, we have in all of our societies, we have tensions and populist tendencies and difficult debates. My fourth point is about MFF and the recovery package, which is absolutely crucial and central. It's the big show in town for the next weeks. And in the panel before, I wanted to make the point, this is not the moment to talk about small or even big institutional issues. What we have to do now in order to get out of this crisis is that the institutions, all of them, and the member states work together in order to get Europe out of this situation, and this will require a lot of work. The MFF and recovery package, if it is leading to an agreement in July, which I hope will not solve all the problems, but without a deal, none of the other challenges can really be mastered. It is the only game in town for the next weeks. MFF alone is already a huge challenge, as we know, because it is about money, it's about the distribution of money, it is about organizing all of our EU policies, and it has to be adopted by unanimity in the Council. Now, we have, at the same time now, we have to agree on what really is a revolution in terms of going about business with the recovery package. The idea to increase the own resource ceiling in order to get space to borrow money, which is then being given via grants or loans, or grants and loans to the member countries, is quite a revolution. Now, I hasten to add, and I think Lucia made a point like that, it is that the MFF and recovery and the way to combat the crisis is potentially a win-win issue. If it works out, all the sectoral issues will become easier, and we can come back to the implementation of the strategic agenda adopted by the European Council in June 19, which remains entirely topical. I will just briefly touch 2 or 3 issues. The first one is climate change. The MFF will bring huge money to this issue, since there is already an agreement right now that at least 25% of expenditure of the MFF must go to the fight against climate change in one form or the other. Recovery will, of course, provide even more money. The general position, I think, shared by most people in the Council is that the Green Deal and the digital revolution must remain top priorities. It is not something to be put aside to combat the crisis. It is part of the solution to the crisis. My next point is migration. Migration has been and is a tricky issue. It is a good example, if I may say so, what happens when you start off on the wrong foot. I personally think that in 2015, it was an error to start with the debate about migrants' quotas for 2 reasons. The first one is that it was not the adequate answer to the issue. The adequate answer was to get back control of the borders and of the system. And the second reason is that it deeply divided the European Union. Now, I agree with those who say we have to find a way on reforming the asylum system. We are waiting for a proposal by the Commission, which has been postponed because right now there are other priorities, but they will come out with it pretty soon. We'll have to work on that. I would, however, add, sometimes people say migration, nothing has been done. I can tell you that since 2015, a lot has been done in terms of migration. We have actually gotten the situation more under control. There's far more cooperation. Frontex has been immensely strengthened. We are working much more with third countries of origin and transit. My next point, and 7th and last but one point, is Europe must become a real global player. And I think this came also up in the course of the conference. If I may put it colloquially, in a world of brutes, it is not enough to be open and virtuous and calling for multilateralism. All of that is nice and great, but it will not be enough to defend our interests and our values. We have to get tougher. We have to better use the instruments and means we have at the EU and at the national level. This is a clear message in the European Council Strategic Agenda of June 2019, which I would invite all of you to reread again. It remains entirely up to date. My final point is a more personal one. I very much look forward to the German presidency, which will have a key role over the coming months. I'm pleased that it's precisely under the German presidency, led by Chancellor Merkel, that I will live my last 6 active years in the Council before taking retirement. I will be sad to leave the Council, but I will also be thrilled to work with you much more intensely than now. Your passion for Europe will help me overcome the sadness about leaving the Council after so many years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim, also for your very insightful concluding remarks, and also pointing out both the lose-lose situation and the win-win situation that we actually have. And indeed, we are very much looking forward to our joint cooperation in the future. And I think it is really now time to say virtually goodbye, at least, and to conclude this conference. But I also would like to point out that we're going to have the next pre-presidency conference then at the end of the German presidency. And this will be, well, at least organized by our Lisbon partner, or Portuguese partner in Lisbon. We are not yet sure whether we're going to meet again virtually or face-to-face, but I'm very much looking forward to the next conference. And I thank all of the participants again for this conference, and hope you had, well, you're taking home lots of inspiring thoughts and motivation to continue working within and for the European Union. And I'm going to leave it at that and thank all of you. Have a good afternoon and a good weekend.